Welcome to the deep dive. Today, our mission is, well, it's pretty laser focused. We are using a single act of resistance, the hunger strike of Kenneth Swift Justice Traywick,
Right.
as a lens to look at this huge ongoing crisis in the Alabama prison system, the ADOC.
And it is a massive crisis. This isn't just about the well-being of one man. What the sources shows that we are dealing with, staggering allegations of abuse.
And systemic failures.
Exactly. Systemic failures that violate the First and Eighth Amendments and an instability that's creating this enormous financial liability for Alabama taxpayers.
That's it. And to guide us through this, we've got a whole stack of sources. We have Kenneth Traywick's own demands firsthand. We have detailed accounts from the advocacy group UVO-TCJ.
And crucially, we have this highly rigorous legal and medical breakdown from his wife, Dr. Elizabeth Hancock Traywick.
Right. And then we tie it all together with investigative reporting on the financial cost, the shocking cost of letting the system fail.
So the central question for our deep dive today is really this. What does it mean for human dignity and the Constitution when a state responds to a peaceful protest, a hunger strike?
A protected protest.
A constitutionally protected protest. And they respond not with negotiation or care, but with immediate total isolation, and what he alleges is retaliation. That response right there tells you everything you need to know.
Okay, let's unpack this. Let's start at the beginning with the catalyst. We're talking about Kenneth Swift Justice Traywick, inmate #177-252. He's an incarcerated advocate at Bullock Correctional Facility.
And this strike, it starts on November 20th, 2025. But like you said, it's not a sudden outburst. He had been raising red flags for a while.
About what specifically?
He was specifically detailing the excessive use of chemical agents and just the horrific treatment of mentally ill inmates, the ones housed in Bullock's mental health dorms. He was exposing a systemic vulnerability.
And the sources point to one event that just seems to have pushed him over the edge. On November 20th.
The very day the protest began.
The very day. An officer identified as Glover allegedly sprayed Traywick with chemical agents from behind while he was just sitting on his bed.
And the context here is it's crucial. Traywick identifies this same Officer Glover as the person who had allegedly threatened witnesses in another very public case, the Michael Rouser case.
So if that's true, it suggests a pattern.
A serious pattern of officers acting with impunity against anyone who speaks out.
And the ADOC's response to the strike was immediate, total isolation.
Instantly. He was put in restrictive housing, and he confirmed he was being kept away from the media. Critically, they withheld his personal property, including his writing supplies.
Which is why we know he was writing notes on these tiny scraps of paper. It's all he had.
It is classic punitive isolation. It's designed to silence him. But despite that, his demands, which UVO-TCJ reported consistently through day 10, were incredibly clear and focused on reform.
He wasn't asking for small perks. He was asking for accountability. He had 4 demands. First, a direct meeting with Commissioner John Hamm.
Right, with the top official.
Second, an end to what he described as this pattern of retaliation and excessive force. Third, an immediate transfer away from Bullock. And finally, the removal of the disciplinary charges that they filed against him right when the strike began.
And if you look at those demands, he's striking for systemic change. He's saying the issues he faced are not isolated. They're symptoms of these huge structural problems within ADOC.
So we've seen the protest, the immediate retaliation, but this all shifts when you see how his family had to fight just for basic information. By day 9, their attempts to get any kind of update, it just highlights this institutional wall of silence.
Oh, it's worse than silence. It borders on medical obstruction. What his wife, Dr. Elizabeth Hancock Traywick, went through between November 28th and December 4th.
Yeah.
It just paints this desperate picture.
What was she doing?
She was calling relentlessly,
Ugh.
trying to reach Ward McKee. We have records of calls going straight to voicemail, with the line just ringing and ringing multiple times a day.
And this is on day 12 of a hunger strike.
Exactly, where every hour matters. She was initially told, call back Monday through Friday, speak to the director of nursing, a Miss Hall.
But when she finally gets a hold of the nursing staff, that wall just gets higher.
It becomes impenetrable. Miss Hall flat out refused to release any medical information. She said their vendor policy prohibits it unless he's actually hospitalized.
But his wife had the official ADOC authorization form.
She did, the H2C, signed by her husband. But the nurse just said, well, we follow our vendor's policy, not ADOC's. It's just unbelievable. The vendor's policy trumped the state's own authorization.
And this is where the stakes get just astronomically high. Dr. Traywick isn't just a concerned spouse. She knows his specific medical history.
Right. Documented heart conditions, past liver and kidney issues. She was desperately trying to tell them, you need to monitor his thiamine levels. You need to be aware of the risk of refeeding syndrome.
Explain that for our listeners. Refeeding syndrome isn't just, getting a stomachache after you eat again.
Not at all. It's a potentially fatal medical emergency. It happens when a body that's been starved, that has adapted to a slow metabolism, is suddenly reintroduced to nutrition.
So what happens inside the body?
It causes this catastrophic shift in fluids and electrolytes, especially phosphate, potassium, and magnesium. When those levels crash, it can lead directly to cardiac failure, respiratory failure, seizures. It's incredibly dangerous.
So by day 14, 2 full weeks without food.
He was squarely in the high-risk window for this. And what the sources show is that ADOC wasn't just failing to give updates, they were actively preventing his wife from giving them life-saving medical data.
And it wasn't just her facing this. His son, Traywick, called Bullock just asking for a welfare check, asking where his dad was.
And the son reported that the staff, including an Officer Finney, treated him with sarcasm and rudeness, just total disregard.
That kind of behavior, it speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It confirms the son's own conclusion. He said it seems to be an officer problem. A culture where there's no accountability to the public, no basic human concern, even for a family member of a man who hasn't eaten in 2 weeks.
And yet somehow, Traywick managed one brief contact on day 12.
Yes, he called his wife from an institutional wall phone.
Yeah.
And he confirmed that Warden McKee had, in fact, visited him.
But what the warden reportedly said is the most telling part.
It's staggering. She said the warden claimed to be unaware of any reason for the strike.
After 2 weeks, with media coverage and calls from the family?
It suggests an official policy of denial. Not a lack of information, but a choice to ignore it.
Okay, let's pivot now from that human and medical emergency to the legal analysis Dr. Traywick put together. I mean, her background, a PhD in counselor education, a former juvenile corrections administrator, it gives her formal challenge so much weight.
It really does. Her formal letter and the addendum she wrote around day 14, it basically outlines a full-blown constitutional crisis driven by ADOC's response. And she focuses heavily on the total isolation.
So how can the system even legally justify that, denying someone the ability to communicate during a protest?
Well, she argues they can't. The combined denial, no physical mail, no tablet, no law library, no writing materials, it creates total isolation. And this, she argues, violates the fundamental right to access the courts, which goes all the way back to Bounds v. Smith.
The state can't just block you from preparing a legal defense.
They can't. And she highlighted this very modern way they're doing it with the new digital-only mail policy.
How is that used against him?
She detailed how the system was used to block messages that contained publicly available Alabama statutory text, just the text of the law.
And the justification.
Facility security. It's a completely transparent, unconstitutional attempt to censor basic legal information.
And on top of the isolation, they hit him with new disciplinary charges.
Which is a classic First Amendment violation. It's retaliation, pure and simple. Case law, like a Farrow v. West, is very clear. You cannot penalize someone for engaging in protected speech, and a peaceful protest is protected speech.
But the violations go even deeper. Her letter talks about the Eighth Amendment, about the inhumane conditions that he was protesting in the first place.
And these conditions are just shocking. In the mental health dorms, inmates are forced to eat and sleep in the same unsanitary spaces, no cleaning supplies, severe pest issues. It's a clear violation of the prohibition against cruel and unusual punishment.
The detail that really stands out to me, though, the one that just strips away all dignity, is the allegation about bathroom access.
It's egregious. Her letter specifically says that officers commanded people to stop urinating during count.
I mean,
It's a direct assault on human dignity, and it violates decades of federal precedent. We're talking about a Supreme Court case, Harp v. Peltzer, which specifically condemned Alabama's practices of restricting bathroom access. It's just a shocking disregard for human beings.
and Dr. Traywick also noted that ADOC pretty much fails to provide any necessary rehabilitative programs. Things like parenting classes, anger management, trade skills.
Anything beyond a basic GED, really. And that's a failure of their most basic mission. The lack of these services violates case law, specifically Brown v. Plata, which requires states to provide adequate care and programming. They are failing their core duties.
And this entire structure, this failure, this disregard for rights, it leads us right to the money, the massive financial crisis this creates, a cost that ultimately is borne by you, the Alabama taxpayer.
And that price tag is It's just staggering. You really have to grasp this number. Investigative reporting shows that since 2020, Alabama taxpayers have paid a jaw-dropping $57 million to defend lawsuits and settle claims against ADOC.
57 million. That's the cost of systemic violence and unaccountability, quantified.
Precisely. And to break it down even more, ADOC settled 94 excessive force lawsuits just between 2020 and 2024. That one category cost the state's General Liability Trust Fund $17.4 million.
So ADOC is the state's single biggest liability risk.
By far. It's no surprise their liability premiums have tripled since 2015.
So why? Why is the cost so high and the violence so persistent? It seems to come down to a total lack of officer accountability. Look at the case of Sergeant Ake Edmonds.
Right. He was named in lawsuits that cost the state over $198,000. And what his case shows is what we call the impunity loop. The former ADOC commissioner actually tried to fire him twice.
But he couldn't.
The state personnel board blocked the firing both times. So you have this deep structural resistance to reform, a bureaucratic system that actively protects a culture of impunity no matter the cost.
So the violence isn't just tolerated, it's financially guaranteed by the state. And the human cost of that feeds directly into the other crises inside.
It does. Take the tragic case of Cody Williams, a $140,000 settlement for a broken hip he got during an alleged beating. But the violence was just the start.
He later admitted to using contraband fentanyl. Why?
To manage the chronic debilitating pain from that injury, the injury inflicted by the system. And this is the profound, tragic link you have to see. The violence, the lack of accountability, it directly fuels the internal drug crisis. State failure just creates more misery.
So here is the core takeaway for you, the listener. Kenneth Traywick's peaceful protest has just illuminated this deep, inseparable link between constitutional failures, the isolation, the retaliation, the inhumane conditions, and just staggering financial waste.
The evidence shows the system is making a calculated choice. It is prioritizing spending millions, $57 million over 4 years on legal defense and damage control from excessive force rather than investing in the reforms and rehabilitation that are legally and ethically required.
So they're choosing to pay for the violence.
They're choosing to pay for the consequences of violence instead of addressing the source of that violence.
And they're making this choice even though ADOC has been under federal court monitoring for years. Cases like Braggs v. Dunn for the exact same thing, placing mentally ill prisoners in prolonged segregation. You have to look at the numbers and ask a serious question.
Right. Considering the $57 million spent on liability defense since 2020, money that went to protecting officers and settling these cases, what beneficial, life-saving impact could that $57 million have had if it were redirected?
If that money went to mental health care, to cognitive behavioral therapy, to real vocational training, to family reunification programs, the entire dynamic of public safety in Alabama could change. What exactly is the public paying for by letting this expensive, dangerous cycle of impunity continue?
Until that culture and those financial priorities shift away from protecting impunity and towards accountability and genuine rehabilitation, the human and monetary costs to the state will only keep rising.
We encourage you to reflect on those costs and their implications. That's all for this deep dive.